I didn't raise my voice. I didn't confront her. I didn't accuse her. I just smiled while my daughter bragged about a luxury vacation she never paid for, using my cards without asking. She thought she was winning. What she didn't know was that silence was the first move, and consequences were already in motion. Before I take you through how everything unraveled, do me a quick favor. Support this story by subscribing and telling me in the comments where you're listening from. It helps these stories reach people who need them. And the penthouse suite has this insane wraparound balcony. My daughter said brightly, "You can literally see dolphins from the bedroom window, Dad." I slowly set my coffee mug down on my desk and leaned back in my chair. The late afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows of my home office, casting long shadows across framed certificates and old family photos. Her voice was cheerful, almost giddy, but something underneath it felt rehearsed. "That sounds beautiful, sweetheart," I said evenly. "Which hotel did you choose?" "The Coral Crest Resort, oceanfront, 5 stars. Ryan surprised me." She laughed. "We even booked a private helicopter tour over the islands." My fingers tapped once against the wood of my desk. "That must have cost a fortune," I said casually. "How much did all of this run you?" A pause. "Just a fraction too long." "Oh, you know," she said lightly. "Ryan had a bonus. And I've been saving. I almost smiled. Ryan worked part-time at a used car lot. My daughter worked 15 hours a week at a boutique that barely paid for gas. I knew their finances better than they did, because I've been quietly bailing them out for years. "That's impressive," I replied. "A penthouse suite, private tours, luxury dining. Must be close to $20,000 for the week." Her tone shifted instantly. Defensive. Sharp. "Why are you interrogating me? Can't I just enjoy my vacation without you making it weird?" There it was. The familiar edge. "I'm not interrogating you," I said calmly. "I'm proud of you." Silence again. "Well, we're boarding soon," she said quickly. "I'll send pictures." "Have a great trip," I replied. "Love you. Love you too." The call ended. I sat there for a long moment, staring at my phone. After nearly 3 decades of being a father, I'd learned to recognize the signs, the rushed explanations, the sudden irritation, the way she dodged numbers. I opened my laptop, logged into my bank account, and there it was. Airline charges, resort deposits, luxury dining reservations, transportation, tours, all on my credit card. Just under $19,000. I didn't react. I didn't curse. I didn't panic. I closed the laptop and stared out the window instead. 3 days later, I reviewed every statement in detail. Not just a vacation, restaurants, shopping sprees, hotel stays going back months. Charges she'd never mentioned. Lies she'd told easily. When I called her and asked directly, she didn't hesitate. "It must be fraud," she said smoothly. "Someone probably stole your card info." I told her I'd call the bank. She sounded relieved. That was the moment something inside me hardened. That night, I slept better than I had in years. Because I finally understood the truth. My daughter didn't see me as her father anymore. She saw me as a resource. And resources, to her, were meant to be used. The next evening, while her plane crossed the ocean, I sat quietly at my desk and made a series of calm, professional phone calls. One by one, I canceled everything. The suite, the rental car, the helicopter tour, the reservations, every upgrade, every indulgence. Then I revoked her access to my cards. By the time she landed, she had nothing waiting for her. And when I went to bed that night, I slept like a man who had finally stopped apologizing for setting boundaries. My phone began buzzing before sunrise. I didn't answer. Not yet. The phone finally stopped vibrating around 9 that morning. 15 missed calls, 12 texts, 3 voicemails, all from the same number. I didn't listen to them right away. I made breakfast first, eggs, toast, coffee. Simple things that grounded me in the quiet of my own kitchen. Outside, the neighborhood was waking up. Joggers passed. A delivery truck hummed down the street. Life, apparently, went on just fine without my daughter's approval. At 9:17 a.m., My phone rang again. I picked it up. "Dad," she said the moment I answered, her voice tight and strained. "Were you having problems with your card yesterday?" I leaned against the counter and looked out the window. "Problems? No. Why?" "Well," she hesitated. "When we checked in, the hotel said there was an issue with payment. Something about the reservation being canceled." "That's odd," I said mildly. "My card's been working fine." "You're sure?" she asked a little too quickly. "Absolutely. I can even test it right now if you want." No, that's okay," she rushed. "It's probably just a system error." "Must be," I replied. "Where are you staying now?" Another pause. "A motel," she muttered. "Just for the night?" "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it, but not in the way she thought. She hung up shortly after. Less than 2 hours later, she called again. "Dad, this is serious," she said. "Everything got canceled. The car, the tours, even the restaurant reservations. The front desk says the cardholder personally called." I took a slow breath. "Did they?" "Yes. And that makes no sense, because we pay for everything ourselves." I set my coffee down carefully. "That's what you told me, yes." Her voice dropped. "You didn't do this, did you?" I didn't answer immediately. There was no point delaying it anymore. "Yes," I said finally. "I canceled them." "What?" Her voice cracked. "Why would you do that?" "Because you used my credit card without permission." "I didn't steal it," she snapped. "I borrowed it." "You didn't ask." "You would have said yes." "That doesn't make it yours." She exhaled sharply. "You're overreacting. It's family money." "Family money." I closed my eyes for a moment. "No," I said. "It's my money. Money I earned. Money you took." "You're punishing me," she said, "over one mistake." "One mistake." I pulled up my laptop. "Do you want me to read the list, or should I?" Silence. Restaurants. Hotels. Shopping. Almost $24,000 over 6 months. Her breathing grew shallow. "I was going to pay you back." "With what?" "I'll figure it out." "You've been saying that for years." She started crying then, not loud, not dramatic, just enough to sound wounded. "You always do this," she said. "You make everything about control." "No," I replied. "I'm making it about accountability." The call ended abruptly. That afternoon, I opened social media for the first time all day. Her story was already live. Shaky videos of a rundown motel, close-ups of peeling paint and stained carpet, a caption about being sabotaged by a controlling parent, another slide about financial abuse, another about toxic families. Hundreds of comments poured in. Sympathy, outrage, advice to cut me off. I stared at the screen, stunned, not by the cruelty, but by how easily she rewrote the truth. She didn't mention the stolen money. She didn't mention the lies. She didn't mention the months of unauthorized charges. She framed herself as a victim. That night, I didn't comment. I didn't argue. I didn't offend myself online. Instead, I pulled out my old files. Every receipt, every transfer, every payment I'd ever made for her. For the first time, I wasn't trying to remember out of guilt. I was documenting out of clarity. And as I stacked the evidence neatly on my desk, one thing became painfully clear. Canceling the vacation hadn't been the punishment. It had been the warning. The next morning, I woke up to messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Former co-workers, distant relatives, even an old neighbor. Some were cautious. Others were openly judgmental. "Is everything okay with you and your daughter?" "I saw what she posted. Didn't sound like you." "Money really changes people, I guess." I read them all without replying. Defending yourself in a court of public opinion is a losing game, especially when emotions are louder than facts. My daughter understood that instinctively. She knew how to cry on camera, how to frame pain, how to trigger sympathy. I had raised her to be confident and expressive. I hadn't realized I'd also taught her how to manipulate. I shut my phone off and opened my filing cabinet instead. What started as a simple review turned into a full accounting of my failure as a parent. Not failure to provide, but failure to teach limits. I printed statements going back years. Tuition payments, rent assistance, car payments, credit card bailouts, a trust fund I created so she wouldn't struggle like I did. The total made my stomach tighten. Over $300,000. And not once had she repaid a cent. Not once had she even acknowledged the sacrifice. I compared it to my son's file, thin by comparison. A few small loans, all repaid promptly. One request for help with security deposit, returned early with a handwritten thank you note. The contrast was impossible to ignore. I hadn't raised two children differently because I loved one more. I had raised them differently because one demanded more, louder, and I confused that with need. That afternoon, I called my attorney. He listened quietly as I laid everything out, the stolen charges, the lies, the social media campaign, the threats disguised as victimhood. When I finished, he didn't sound surprised. This is what entitlement looks like when it's finally challenged, he said. And it usually escalates before it stops. What should I do? I asked. Protect yourself, financially and legally. We talked through options, revoking access, freezing accounts, updating estate documents, not as punishment, but as protection. By the end of the call, my hands were steady. That evening, my daughter posted again. This time, it was more polished. A long text over a muted background, therapy language, buzzwords, trauma, control, emotional manipulation. She never mentioned the stolen money. She never mentioned the lies. She implied I'd been this way her entire life. I felt something then, not anger, not sadness, clarity. If she wanted to rewrite history, I wasn't obligated to play along. The next morning, I sat across from my attorney and signed the papers. Her trust fund, revoked, redirected to my son. My will, updated. She would still have a roof over her head. She would still have the ability to work, to build, to grow. But she would no longer have access to the consequences of my labor. When I left the office, I felt lighter than I had in years. That afternoon, I called my son. He was quiet when I explained. Shocked, reluctant, even guilty. I don't want her money, he said. It's not her money, I replied. It's the result of choices, yours and hers. He didn't argue after that. 2 days later, I mailed the legal notice. I didn't include a letter, just the documents. Let the law say what emotions couldn't. The call came 3 days after that. What did you do? She screamed the moment I answered. I protected myself, I said calmly. You ruined my life. No, I replied. I stopped financing it. She threatened. She cried. She blamed. She demanded. And then she did something that erased any lingering doubt I had left. She sued me. The lawsuit accused me of emotional abuse, financial manipulation, psychological harm. I read it twice. Then I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was inevitable. She wasn't sorry. She was angry she'd been stopped. And in that moment, any guilt I'd been carrying disappeared completely, because accountability doesn't feel like abuse to people who respect boundaries. It only feels like cruelty to those who expected unlimited access. I closed the folder, called my attorney back, and said the only words that mattered now, let's proceed. And that's when my daughter learned that silence, backed by truth, is far more dangerous than anger ever could be. The lawsuit didn't hit me the way she probably expected. I sat at my dining table with the papers spread out in front of me, sunlight slanting to the blinds, coffee cooling untouched at my elbow. The language was dramatic, clinical, and deeply insulting. It painted me as a controlling tyrant who had weaponized money to dominate his daughter's life. Every boundary I'd ever set was reframed as abuse. Every time I'd said no was evidence of cruelty. Every dollar I'd given freely was twisted into financial leverage. I felt no panic. What I felt was relief. Because the moment she filed that lawsuit, the last illusion shattered. This was no longer a misunderstanding. No longer a wounded child lashing out. This was a calculated attempt to hurt me, because I had finally stopped protecting her from consequences. I called my attorney within minutes. He wasn't surprised. Entitlement escalates when it's challenged, he said calmly. People who've never been told no often confuse boundaries with attacks. He walked me through what would happen next. Motions, discovery, evidence, timelines. He asked if I still had all the documentation I'd mentioned earlier. I have more than you'll need, I said. And I meant it. That afternoon, I pulled every financial record I had ever kept. Not just the last 6 months, everything. Tuition payments, apartment deposits, car purchases, credit card statements, trust documents, email exchanges, text messages, screenshots of her social media posts accusing me of abuse while conveniently omitting the theft. I organized them chronologically. The pattern was unmistakable. Support turned into expectation. Expectation turned into entitlement. Entitlement turned into theft. Theft turned into accusation. By evening, I had 3 thick folders labeled with dates and totals. I didn't feel angry as I worked. I felt methodical, focused, almost detached. The next day, my attorney filed our response. It was clean, factual, mercilessly precise. We denied every allegation and countered with evidence of unauthorized charges, documented lies, and public defamation. We included screenshots of her social media posts, timestamps, and bank records proving the exact amount she'd taken without consent. We didn't insult her. We didn't speculate about her motives. We simply told the truth and let the facts speak. That same afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from my son. "Dad," she called me. I closed my eyes for a moment. What did she say? "She's furious," he admitted. "Says you've always favored me. That you were just looking for an excuse to cut her off. Did you believe her?" There was a pause. Then quietly, "No." He told me she demanded he pressure me to reverse the trust changes. When he refused, she accused him of betrayal, of stealing her inheritance. "She doesn't see it," he said. "She really doesn't." "I know," I replied. "That's why this is to run its course." The following week was brutal. Her social media posts intensified, longer, more emotional. She started using words like survivor and escape. She implied years of mistreatment without offering specifics. Her followers multiplied. So did the comments. I was advised not to respond publicly. So I didn't. Instead, I let the legal process do what it was designed to do. Discovery was where everything began to unravel for her. Under oath, she had to explain the charges. She had to explain why she told me she'd save for the vacation when bank records proved otherwise. She had to explain why she claimed independence while using my credit card. She had to explain why she called it borrowing when she never asked and never intended to repay. And she had to explain why she publicly accused me of abuse only after facing consequences. Her answers were inconsistent, vague, contradictory. Meanwhile, my records were exact. Dates, amounts, authorization or lack thereof. The judge requested additional documentation. We provided it within hours. Her legal team requested extensions. Twice. Then something unexpected happened. One of her posts disappeared. Then another. Then her entire account went private. A few days later, my attorney called. "They want to talk settlement," he said. "Already?" I asked. "They didn't expect you to have this level of documentation. And they didn't expect the counterclaim." "What are they offering?" He told me. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. They wanted me to drop the counterclaim in exchange for her withdrawing the lawsuit and issuing a vague public statement about family misunderstandings. "No," I said immediately. "She needs to take responsibility." My attorney agreed. And frankly, with this evidence, she's not in a strong position. The next call came from her directly. She used a new number. "Dad," she said softly. Too softly. "We need to talk." "I'm only communicating to my attorney now." I replied. "Please," she whispered. "This has gone too far. You took it too far when you stole from me." I said evenly. "And further when you lied about it." "I was desperate," she said. "You don't understand the pressure I was under." "I understand perfectly," I replied. "I understand what it looks like when someone avoids responsibility." She cried then. Real tears this time, I think, or at least convincing ones. "I'll apologize," she said. Publicly. I'll say I was wrong. That's not enough, I said. What do you want? She demanded, frustration bleeding through. I want the truth, I said, and I want you to face it without blaming anyone else. She hung up on me. A week passed. Then two. The lawsuit stalled. Her post stopped. Then, quietly, her attorney filed a motion to withdraw the case. No explanation. No apology. Just gone. The judge dismissed it with prejudice. It was over, or so I thought. 2 months later, I received a message from an unknown number. It was from her. The tone was different this time. No accusations. No demands. No manipulation. Just words. She wrote about leaving Ryan. About realizing how deeply she tied her sense of worth to money she didn't earn. About sitting in a lawyer's office and hearing her own lies repeated back to her in legal language and hating how they sounded. She admitted she'd stolen from me. She admitted she'd lied. She admitted she'd tried to destroy me rather than admit she was wrong. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't ask for money. She said she was working full-time now, living modestly, learning what independence actually meant. I don't expect anything from you, she wrote. I just needed you to know that I finally understand. I read the message 3 times. Then I put my phone down. Trust doesn't come back because someone says the right words. It comes back when behavior changes, consistently, quietly, without an audience. I didn't reply. Not yet, because some lessons require time to settle. And for the first time in a very long while, I was no longer afraid of what would happen next. I had already reclaimed what mattered most. My integrity, my peace, and the right to say no without guilt, without apology, and without regret. The silence that followed her message lasted longer than I expected. Days passed, then weeks. No calls, no texts, no dramatic posts resurrected for sympathy. For the first time since all this began, there was nothing demanding my attention. No crisis engineered to pull me back into the role I'd played for decades. I tried to settle into the quiet, but it felt unfamiliar, almost suspicious. When you spend years reacting, responding, fixing, you forget how to simply exist without being needed. My mornings became structured again. Coffee on the porch, a walk through the neighborhood, reading the paper without glancing at my phone every 5 minutes. And yet, beneath the calm, my mind kept circling the same question. Was her message real? I replayed it over and over, not looking for comfort, but for cracks. Old habits die hard. I'd learned the cost of believing too quickly. Apologies had come before, after wrecked cars, after maxed out cards, after broken promises. Each one sincere in the moment, each one followed by the same pattern. Tears, regret, relief, repeat. But this time felt quieter. No audience, no leverage, no ask. That unsettled me more than her anger ever had. I didn't tell anyone about the message. Not my attorney. Not my son. I needed to see what came next without outside noise shaping my expectations. What came next, surprisingly, was nothing until one afternoon, nearly 6 weeks later, when I received an envelope in the mail. Handwritten address. No return label. I knew immediately who it was from. Inside was a cashier's check. $1,200. Along with a note. Not long. Not poetic. Just straightforward. This is the first payment. I know it doesn't undo anything. I'm not asking you to respond. I just wanted to start doing what I should have done from the beginning. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time staring at that check. It wasn't about the amount. Compared to what she'd taken, it was insignificant, but it wasn't symbolic either. It was inconvenient money. Hard-earned money. The kind you don't send unless you're serious. I deposited it without comment. Another month passed. Then another envelope. $1,500 this time. No note, just the check. I didn't feel relief. I felt something closer to cautious respect. Meanwhile, my life continued to simplify. Without the constant drain, emotional and financial, I found myself thinking more clearly, sleeping better, even laughing more easily. My relationship with my son deepened in unexpected ways. Without competition for my attention or resources, our conversations felt honest, balanced. One evening, over dinner at his place, he brought her up carefully. "She hasn't asked me for money," he said. "Not once." That alone told me more than any apology ever could. Another envelope arrived 2 weeks later. Then another, always on time, always precise. No guilt-tripping notes, no explanations, no reminders of our shared history, just repayment. It was then that I understood something important. Real change doesn't announce itself. It shows up quietly and does the work. 3 months after her first message, she sent one more. "I don't expect you to trust me. I just wanted you to know I'm still here, doing what I said I would. If you ever want to talk, I'll be ready. If not, I understand." I read it once. Then I replied, "Thank you for taking responsibility. That matters." Nothing more, nothing less. She didn't respond. And for the first time, that felt right. I wasn't withholding affection as punishment. I wasn't testing her. I was protecting both of us from falling back into the old dynamic too quickly. Forgiveness, if it came, needed a foundation stronger than emotion. Months later, I heard through my son that she'd taken a second job, downsized her apartment, sold some things she didn't need. She didn't post about it. She didn't brand it as growth. She just lived it. The checks kept coming. Slowly, steadily. I kept depositing them. And somewhere along the way, something unexpected happened. The anger I'd been carrying, quiet, buried, heavy, started to loosen its grip. Not because she'd earned forgiveness yet, but because I no longer needed it to move forward. I had already reclaimed my peace. Whatever happened next would be built on truth, not obligation. And that, I realized, was the greatest gift I could give both of us, even if it took her a lifetime to understand it. Winter came quietly that year. No dramatic phone calls. No emergencies. No sudden demands disguised as family obligations. Just cold mornings, bare trees, and a strange kind of stillness I was still learning how to live with. For the first time since my daughter was born, my life wasn't organized around anticipating her next need. At first, that felt wrong. I'd built my identity around being the reliable one, the father who fixed everything, smoothed everything over, absorbed every consequence so his child wouldn't have to. Walking away from that role didn't feel like freedom right away. It felt like amputation. Necessary but painful. The repayment checks continued. Sometimes $800. Sometimes $1,300. Once, $2,000 with a brief note apologizing for the delay because she'd switched jobs and had to wait for her first full paycheck. No excuses. No self-pity. Just information. Each envelope was a quiet reminder that this wasn't the same daughter who had screamed at me on the phone or accused me of abuse online. But it also wasn't yet the daughter I trusted. And trust, I reminded myself, isn't rebuilt with good intentions. It's rebuilt with time. My attorney suggested we formalize a repayment plan, convert it into something legally binding. I considered it seriously. Part of me wanted protection. Another part wanted to see what she would do without being forced. In the end, I declined. If she's changing, I said, I want it to be because she chooses to, not because a contract tells her to. He nodded. That tells me everything I need to know about your priorities. Around that time, something else happened. I received a call from an unfamiliar number late one evening. "Mr. Foster?" A woman asked politely. "My name is Elaine. I'm a therapist. I've been working with your daughter, and with her permission, I wanted to reach out." I didn't answer right away. My instinct was suspicion. Years of manipulation had trained me to assume every approach came with an angle. "I'm listening," I said finally. "She's been doing individual therapy consistently for several months." Elaine continued. "We've been focusing on accountability, boundaries, and identities separate from external validation, especially financial validation. She suggested that part of her progress includes acknowledging harm without expecting immediate reconciliation. That caught my attention. "I'm not asking you to forgive her," Elaine added quickly, "or even to meet her. I just wanted you to know that from a clinical perspective, She's doing the work. Whether or not you ever reconnect is entirely your choice. When the call ended, I sat in my living room long after the lights outside had gone dark. For years, I'd hoped someone would help her see the light. Now that it seemed to be happening, I was surprised by how cautious I felt. Healing doesn't erase memory, and memory has a long shadow. The holidays came and went without incident. No surprise visits. No emotional ambushes. No guilt-laced invitations. I spent Thanksgiving with my son and his family. Quiet, warm, honest. When someone mentioned her name, it wasn't charged, just factual. She's working a lot, my son said once. Seems steadier. I nodded and left it at that. On New Year's Day, I received another message from her. No apologies. No reflections. Just, Happy New Year. I hope this one is kinder to you. I replied the same day. Thank you. I hope you continue building the life you want. That was it. The balance held. Until one afternoon in early spring. I was leaving the grocery store when I saw her. She was at the edge of the parking lot, loading bags into an old sedan I didn't recognize. Her hair was pulled back. No makeup. No design or anything. Just jeans, a plain jacket, and tired eyes. She froze when she saw me. For a moment, neither of us moved. I felt the past surge up, anger, grief, pride, disappointment, all colliding at once. She looked smaller than I remembered, not physically, but emotionally, like someone who'd been stripped of armor they never should have been wearing in the first place. She didn't approach me. She didn't wave. She just stood there, clearly debating whether to flee or stay. I made the decision for both of us. Hi, I said. Her breath hitched. Hi, Dad. We stood there awkwardly, carts and cars moving around us, life happening in between. I didn't expect to see you, she said softly. Neither did I. Silence. I won't keep you, she added quickly. I just want to say thank you for letting me fix what I broke, even if it takes years. I studied her face, looking for the familiar defensiveness, the entitlement, the need. I didn't see it. I'm glad you're working, I said. That matters. She nodded, eyes shining but steady. I know I don't get to ask for anything. I just wanted you to know I'm still paying everything back. I will, no matter how long it takes. I know, I replied. That was all. No hug, no promises, just truth. She got into her car and drove away. I stood there for a long time after she was gone. That night, for the first time since this all began, I cried, not from betrayal or anger, but from release. Because whether or not our relationship ever fully healed, one thing was finally clear. The cycle had been broken. And sometimes that's the most loving thing a parent can do, even when it hurts. After the grocery store encounter, something shifted, but not in the way I'd expected. There was no sudden closeness, no emotional floodgates opening, no late-night phone calls trying to catch up. Instead, there was space. Honest space. The kind that lets people exist without performing for one another. Weeks passed, then months. The checks kept coming. Smaller sometimes, larger other times, but always steady. Always on time. I stopped tracking the balance obsessively. At some point, repayment became less about the money and more about the pattern. Consistency. Discipline. Follow through. One afternoon, my attorney called. I want to let you know, he said, your daughter formally withdrew the remaining claims tied to the original filing. No conditions. No requests. I thanked him and hung up. I didn't tell her I knew. If she was doing the right thing now, she didn't need applause for it. What surprised me most was how much my own life had changed in her absence. I'd always told myself I was doing everything for my kids, but without the constant drain, I realized how little of my life had actually been mine. I joined a local walking group, took a class I'd postponed for years, reconnected with friends I quietly distanced myself from because I was always busy helping family. Busy enabling, I corrected myself. One evening, my son came over after work. We sat on the back patio as the sun dipped low, the air warm and calm. She asked me something the other day. He said, carefully. I didn't interrupt. She asked if I thought you'd ever forgive her. I exhaled slowly. What did you say? I told her forgiveness isn't a moment. It's a process. And that right now you're watching actions, not words. He smiled faintly. She said that made sense. That mattered more than I expected. A few days later, I received a letter in the mail. Not a check this time. A handwritten letter. I debated opening it for nearly an hour. When I finally did, I read it standing at the kitchen counter, the afternoon light spilling across the page. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't recount the past. She wrote about learning to budget, about saying no to things she couldn't afford, about the discomfort of realizing how often she'd used charm instead of effort, about sitting in therapy sessions and hearing her own justifications repeated back to her, and finally understanding how hollow they sounded. She wrote one sentence that stayed with me. I didn't lose you because of the vacation. I lost you because I stopped seeing you as a person. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer. That night, I slept deeply. Not because everything was fixed, but because nothing was being forced. Spring gave way to summer. At a family gathering hosted by a distant cousin, I saw her again. This time, she was laughing quietly with an aunt, helping clear plates, blending into the background instead of commanding it. When our eyes met, she nodded. I nodded back. That was it. Later, my cousin leaned over and whispered, "She's different." "Yes," I said, "she is." As the evening wound down, she approached me. Not alone, not dramatically, just a few steps closer, keeping respectful distance. "I didn't expect to see you here," she said. "Neither did I." She smiled faintly. "I'm glad you came." "So am I?" She hesitated, then said, "I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted to tell you. I understand now why you didn't rescue me this time." I looked at her for a long moment. "Good," I said, "because rescuing you was a problem." She nodded. No argument. No defensiveness. "I know." That was the moment I realized something important. She wasn't trying to get her old life back. She was building a new one. Later that night, alone in my house, I poured myself a drink and sat quietly, thinking about how close I'd come to giving in again, to guilt, to fear, to the reflex of smoothing things over. If I had, none of this would have happened. Not the growth, not the accountability, not the change. Sometimes love isn't about holding on tighter. Sometimes it's about letting go long enough for someone to learn how to stand on their own. And if they come back standing, truly standing, you meet them there, not as a savior, not as a wallet, but as equals. No dramatic confrontation. No final shouting match. No victory speech. It came quietly, almost gently, and that was how I knew it was real. Nearly a full year had passed since the Florida trip collapsed, since the cards were canceled, since the lies unraveled, and the lawsuit shattered whatever illusion I had left. Time, it turns out, is far more ruthless than anger. Anger burns hot and fast. Time just waits and makes sure the truth has nowhere left to hide. My life had changed in ways I hadn't expected. The house was calmer. My phone was silent more often than not. My sleep was deeper. For the first time in decades, I wasn't bracing myself for the next crisis. I stopped checking my bank account with dread. I stopped wondering what emergency call would come next. I stopped flinching every time my phone buzzed. Peace doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't knock. It doesn't announce itself. It just stays. One Tuesday afternoon, I came home from the grocery store and found an envelope sitting neatly in my mailbox. No return address. No dramatic handwriting. Just my name, written carefully, like someone didn't want to make a mistake. Inside was a cashier's check, exact to the cent. No rounding. No apology letter stuffed with excuses. No explanation. Just the final amount she owed me. Attached was a small note, folded once. "This is a last payment." I wanted to finish what I started. Nothing else. No signature flourish. No emotional plea. No attempt to reopen old wounds. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, holding that check between my fingers. The paper felt heavier than it should have, not because of the money, but because of what it represented. Completion, not forgiveness. not reconciliation. Completion. When I deposited the check, I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel triumph. I felt something steadier. Closure. That night, my son called. "She told me she finished paying you back," he said. "Yes," I replied. "She did." He hesitated. "How are you doing with everything?" I thought carefully before answering. "I'm steady," I said. "That's new for me." He exhaled softly. "I'm glad." 2 weeks later, he called again. "She wants to know if you'd be willing to meet her. Just coffee. No expectations." I didn't answer right away. Not because I was angry, but because I needed to be honest with myself. Forgiveness given too early isn't forgiveness. It's avoidance. I spent days asking myself one question. Am I doing this because I'm ready, or because I feel guilty? On the fourth day, I finally said yes. We chose a small cafe halfway, between our neighborhoods. Neutral, public, no memories attached. She was already there when I arrived. She stood up when she saw me, then froze, unsure whether to step forward or stay put. That hesitation told me more than any apology ever could. "Hi," she said. "Hi." We sat. The silence was uncomfortable. It was careful, like both of us were afraid of breaking something fragile. She surprised me by not rushing to speak. Instead, she said, "Thank you for meeting me." "You asked respectfully," I replied. "That matters." She nodded. "I'm trying to do things right this time." We talked about simple things first. Work, books, weather, ordinary conversation. Stripped of manipulation, stripped of expectation. Eventually, she took a breath that told me the real conversation was coming. "I don't want things to go back to how they were," she said quietly. "I don't deserve that." "I don't want that either," I said. Her shoulders relaxed. Not because she got what she wanted, but because she finally heard the truth. "I don't want to be taken care of anymore," she said. "I want to be trusted." "That takes time," I replied. "I know," she said. "I'm willing to earn it." She didn't ask me to confirm anything. She didn't seek reassurance. That mattered. When we stood to leave, she hesitated again. "I know I can't undo what I did," she said. "But I hope one day you'll be able to see me without only remembering the worst version of me." I looked at her for a long moment. "The worst version of you taught me the hardest lesson of my life," I said. "And the best version of you taught me hope. Both exist. What matters is which one you choose every day." Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. "I'll keep choosing better," she said. We didn't hug. We didn't promise holidays or weekly calls. We simply walked out separate doors, lighter than when we walked in. Months passed. Not weeks. Not days. Months. And that was how I knew the change was real. There were no sudden demands. No emotional emergencies. No, just this once requests. When she invited me to dinner, it wasn't extravagant. No catered spread. No expensive wine meant to impress. She cooked, burned the garlic, overcooked the chicken, apologized for it, and laughed when I said it was fine. She didn't ask me to pay. She didn't ask for approval. She didn't ask for anything. That was the moment it clicked. Not when she paid the money back. Not when she apologized. But when she stopped expecting. That's when accountability becomes real. I realized then that I hadn't canceled a vacation to punish my daughter. I canceled it to stop becoming someone she could exploit, and to stop her from becoming someone she wouldn't recognize. The lawsuit was dropped quietly weeks later. No fanfare. No announcement. Just a formal withdrawal filed by her attorney. Her marriage ended not long after. She didn't tell me right away. I heard it from my son first. She left, he said. Got her own place. Full-time job. No safety net. I said nothing for a moment. That took courage. I finally said, he agreed. One afternoon, I found myself in the garden, pruning roses I'd neglected for too long. Dirt under my nails. Sun on my back. A quiet life. My phone buzzed. A message from her. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know I finally understand what you were trying to teach me. I didn't reply immediately. Some things deserve silence, not as punishment, but as space. Weeks later, I sent one sentence back. I see the effort. Keep going. That was enough. I learned something through all of this. Something I wish someone had told me decades ago. Love without boundaries isn't love. It's permission. And consequences aren't cruelty. They're clarity. I didn't lose my daughter. I stopped losing myself. And in doing so, I gave her the only gift that ever mattered. The chance to grow up for real. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to support it. Subscribe. Share your thoughts in the comments. And tell me where you're watching from.